Okay, we are finally back. We are still living out of boxes a little bit, but our move is almost done. And we've got all of our little urban farm, our bees and our ducks here with us now, which makes me very happy. I don't know if you can hear the cars. This new location is actually a little bit more in the city, which is kind of a tangent from what we're going for, but it's a stepping stone for us to get into a little bit more of a rural scenario. So here we are. Something that I have appreciated even in the move and everything has been these quirky gals behind me. Even in the middle of December, they're just doing everything that they can for us. So I'm going to take a little bit of time today to talk about the ducks and appreciate them, and talk a little bit about why our family chose ducks over chickens, and just drop a little knowledge about them. They're pretty cool. My name is Christina, and you're watching my channel, Let's Do Something Real. Let's start with eggs. Chicken eggs and duck eggs are actually very similar. Honestly, if I had the space, I would probably have both chickens and ducks. But since we had to choose, there were some reasons why we chose ducks. One of them was the eggs. The most noticeable difference is the size. Since duck eggs are a little bit bigger than chicken eggs, inevitably you just get a little bit more of the wonderful goodies that come in chicken eggs. But there are a couple of differences that make duck eggs a little bit more nutritious than chicken eggs. They have almost twice the amount of folate and more than twice the amount of iron and vitamin B12 as chicken eggs do. They also taste very similar. A lot of people say that duck eggs do taste a little bit more rich than chicken eggs, and I would agree with that. But honestly, if you weren't to tell me which one I was getting, I probably wouldn't be able to tell. They also contain more albumin, which is great for baking, and it helps create lift and makes pastries and cakes nice and fluffy and light. They do, however, also contain about twice as much cholesterol as chicken eggs, so that's just one downside of duck eggs. But since they are so much bigger, typically you can get away with one duck egg where you would have to do 2 chicken eggs, so it kind of evens out. I've also heard some scientists believe that the slightly different proteins in duck eggs and the higher amounts of omega-3 fatty acids help create an alkaline environment in your body and can play a role in reducing inflammation and preventing heart disease and cancer. They also have a longer shelf life than chicken eggs because the shell is a lot tougher and thicker. That does, however, make them a little bit harder to crack. But once you get through it, you do get this beautiful golden yolk and this nice large egg. Another reason why we love our ducks here in the Pacific Northwest is because they are absolutely perfectly adapted to this weather. This is their natural habitat. So everything that they've got going on is based on living here in the cold, rainy weather during the winter. They've got that nice, thick, extra layer of body fat, and they've got those nice, warm down feathers underneath an outer layer of waterproof feathers. And the most amazing thing I think about them is because they are waterfowl, they have a counter current heat exchange type of blood flow. So what happens is their feet are not covered in feathers, but that's really the only part of them that is vulnerable to the cold. And so their adaptation is pretty amazing. They've got this blood flow that the cold blood coming out of their foot runs right next to the warm blood coming out of their body. And so what happens is the warm blood warms up the cool blood before it even gets back up into the more insulated part of their body. It's a really effective and efficient way of keeping their core temperature warmer during the colder months. And because they are so cold hardy, we get eggs throughout the year. It's middle of December now, little past the middle, and we're still getting like 1 to 3 eggs a day, which is not as much as midsummer, but it's still something, and I think that's pretty impressive. With our chickens, we would have a lull for about 2 months in the middle of winter, and that just doesn't seem to happen with the ducks. The other thing, and this is not even something that I had considered before getting ducks, this last summer was very hot, like record-breaking heat this last summer. And I have a lot of friends with chickens. And unfortunately, it was very difficult for them to keep their chickens hydrated. Chickens aren't the hugest fan of water, so even getting them to like eat something frozen or trying to get any kind of water on them, they're just not a fan. So I had a lot of people that I know have some trouble with their chickens. Whereas our ducks, they just bloop right into the water and cool themselves down, and they drink their ducks. I don't know if there's any limit to how much they can drink. So they did a really great job of keeping themselves hydrated and cool during the massive heat wave this summer. And that was something that I had not foreseen, but I felt really lucky that that was just how it ended up happening. And of course, I can't get out of this video without mentioning the permaculture benefits of ducks. They are wonderful on both ends. They're great for pest control and they're great for fertilizer. When we had chickens, I was always trying to shoo them away. I couldn't let them free roam as much as the ducks because I was always worried that they would scratch up the roots of my plants and create little wells in my gardens to take their dust baths. They have the talons and the sharp beaks, and so they can kind of scratch into the dirt to get grubs. Ducks have the dull beaks and they don't really have talons, so all of the pests that they're eating, first of all, are from the surface. So it really does the plants a service, kind of like eliminating a lot of the pest issues that they would get on their leaves. And the ducks, they can't dig into the ground, so they wouldn't dig up the root systems. They don't have the kind of feet and the kind of beaks that they're able to do that. So they're a little less destructive in the garden, in my opinion. So I like that about them. Also, duck manure is immediately usable as fertilizer. Chicken manure needs to rest for a time before you can use it in the garden. It's a little too high in nitrogen right off the bat. It's got to kind of cool down, whereas the duck manure is immediately usable. So as they're kind of walking through the garden and eating the pests, they're also fertilizing, and that fertilizer is not going to shock the plants in any way. It's going to be immediately good for them. The last thing that I will say, there's a lot more that I could say, but in the interest of keeping this video less than half an hour long, the last thing I'll mention is that the ducks have a hilarious personality. They're so fun to watch. They are just the goofiest, funniest little creatures. And I will admit that it was my son's idea to get ducks in the first place when he was a little guy. I think he was around 4. We had chickens. And the thing about chickens is they can get really bold, and sometimes they can get a little insistent. And they learned that we meant food, so whenever we would step outside, if they weren't enclosed, they would totally rush us, including my son. Again, he was 4 at the time. And I can only imagine what it's like being about 3 feet tall and having these big birds that resemble tiny velociraptors just like running at you that have sharp talons and beaks. That's got to be an experience. But with the ducks, luckily they've got dull beaks. They don't really have those talons that chickens have. They have little teeny little nails at the edges of their webbed feet, but really nothing to write home about. And they're a little bit more wary than chickens. They don't get as bold. So if anything, they're going to kind of wait for a second to see if it's safe before cautiously approaching. They're not just gonna run at you. So for somebody small, that's got to be a little bit more comfortable. And they've always just been very user-friendly for kids and for us. They're not too hard to catch if you ever need to treat them for anything. And they're so goofy and fun to watch.
Thank you guys so much for joining us on our adventures. We're so glad to be back to sharing them with you. If you want to keep up with us, please like and subscribe. It only ever helps. We'll have more for you soon, and we'll see you then. Go get happy.
Ha ha ha!